and welcome to this evening's event. My name is Clive Foster. I'm a senior minister at the Pilgrim Church in Nottingham and also vice chair for Windrush National Organisation. So I want to welcome everyone this evening to this evening's event, which is the second of our Windrush engagement events with our Home Office colleagues as well. Can I just request that this meeting will be recorded? So if you do not wish to want to appear on camera, please do switch your cameras off. We are recording this meeting. And if we can request as well that if you could keep your audio on mute throughout the evening's event, and we'll indicate when you can come off mute, and that will be very helpful to help with our communications throughout tonight's proceedings. So just before we start today's meeting, we'd just like to have a word of prayer and just to have God's blessing on today's event. So for those of you who wish to just acknowledge that, can we just pray at this time? Father, we just thank you for your goodness towards us. We thank you for your mercy. Lord, we know that you are with us. We know that we are going through a very difficult time, and we ask for your love and compassion to be with us. Thank you for giving this opportunity to meet in this fashion. And we ask for your guidance, your wisdom, and your insight in all things as we give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, as we said earlier, today is our second of our Windrush National Organisation engagement events. And this meeting is an opportunity once again for members of the public to hear from the Home Office with regards to the latest position concerning the Windrush schemes. So we will be hearing from Home Office staff with regards to that. So we'll be hearing specifically around the compensation, and also we'll be hearing from members of the Windrush task force as well. We recognize that these engagement meetings are very important to not only hear from the Home Office, but also as an opportunity for you to ask questions, become aware of the latest information, and to participate with other activities that are happening concerning the Windrush scandal. Just to say as well that if you do wish to want to ask a question, we are encouraging people to use the chat facility, which is available, and you can put your questions on that. So the format for today's event will be shortly be hearing from the chair of the Windrush National Organisation, Bishop Desmond Jadu, and he'll be talking a bit more about the organisation and a bit more about the relationship with the Home Office. Then we'll be handing over to our Home Office personnel who are here from the compensation and the task force team. And then we'll be opening it up for questions and answers, and we'll be posing some questions to our Home Office staff, and also questions that are in the chat. We will pick them up and put them to the team as well. And obviously we are looking for your support, openness and respect as we manage these sessions as well. It's an opportunity to ask those questions. We are not afraid of asking the difficult questions, but we do that respectfully, and we do that in a manner whereby we seek to get the information, if that information can be provided. One of the things that we are doing as part of Windrush National Organisation, we are encouraging people to put your questions in the chat. If the Home Office cannot answer that question during this meeting, we will ensure that they get a written copy of the question and they will then write that up. We've already posted that on our previous engagement, and so that there is clear transparency to some of these questions as well, because I do realize that people may have individual cases, can be a bit complex, which cannot be answered, but we will seek to support your questions are answered throughout today's session. So without any further ado, I would like at this time to invite the chair of the Windrush National Organisation to come forward and say a few words at this time, Bishop Desmond Jadu at this time. Bishop Desmond.
Thank you, Reverend Clyde Foster, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us this evening. Just to reiterate what Reverend Clive has said, we're not here to argue. We're here to actually try and find constructive dialogue and get questions answered. And it's important as well that we encourage transparency from the Home Office. That's why I'm pleased this evening to say we're joined by the newly appointed head of Windrush Compensation, Thomas Gregg, and also as well from the Windrush Status team, we've got Azar on the call tonight, and also David Levy. And when I finish speaking, I'll be asking Tom to speak to you. And then following that, we'll ask David as well to speak to you as well. And then we'll go into questions. Now, the important thing is, just to reiterate what Reverend Clive has said, the main reason for asking you to put your questions as well in the chat is that should we run out of time, because we do like to keep these meetings to as much time as we possibly can. Last time we copied and paste your questions. We don't change the context of your questions whatsoever, but if there's a spelling mistake, clearly we'll change that. And we submit those to the Home Office. Now, the last time we submitted 19 questions, and all 19 questions were responded to, and they were posted on our website, and we ensured that the details that we had of those that connected the meeting, attended the meeting, we had their email addresses, we sent them to them directly as well, because we want to encourage transparency. Now, you may say, who's the Windrush National Organisation? We're an umbrella organisation for about 15 Windrush groups. We have a national strategy, which is on our website, www.windrushnationalorganisation.com. On a personal note, myself, I've been dealing with people who've been caught up in the Windrush scandal before it was even exposed. So I've been at this about 6 years. For people who've been here for quite a long time and they had no status, and some sadly got deported. They are back in the country now, and we've helped them to resettle. Our priority is to seek justice for the Windrush generation in terms of ensuring that they get their status, they get their compensation that they're entitled to. We also as well deal with not just national engagement, but international engagement as well. We're now talking to the foreign governments as well. At the moment, we're talking to the CARICOM Caucus, which is the CARICOM Caucus of Commissioners here in the UK that covers the 15 CARICOM islands as well in the Caribbean. And we now have engagement in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, also Ghana and Nigeria. So clearly what we're doing at the moment is expanding the work that we're doing. Now, we do not work for the Home Office. We are here to be that bridge into the Home Office because we know that there's an issue of trust and confidence. But one of the things we've got to do as well at the same time is we recognize we need to be sensible in ensuring that those who have been impacted do receive what they're entitled to. In addition to this, we've also identified that people do need health and well-being support, and also in some cases, bereavement support as well. And we are clearly aware of this. And we have supported people. And I mean, on a positive note, we even got the Home Office right in the Christmas break, just before, to actually pay for a funeral for someone who sadly passed away. So therefore, we are getting cooperation from the Home Office. But clearly, there's a lot more work that needs to be done as well. And when we look at documents such as the Wendy Williams review, then clearly as well, we all need to be working on this to ensure that people get what is rightfully theirs, but also as well to ensure that our children and grandchildren don't go through any of this. Now, I mentioned them briefly because I recall we were doing a public engagement meeting in Ilford. There's 150 people there. And at 10 to 9, and I know David Levy will recall this, when the young lady came in with a baby strapped around her chest, saying, my mum has no status, myself and sisters have no status, and none of our children have status either. That's how impacting this is. But importantly, they've now been sorted out. And that's the key element. And that's why, that's one of the main purposes of meetings of this nature. Now, clearly there are issues with the compensation scheme, and Tom Gregg now heads that, and he's here to talk about that this evening. We still know there are people with status issues. I've had emails up to today from people who have got status issues, and we'll be making representations on those as well. Now, let me make it clear. As an organization, we have no issues making representations. We will make those representations, we will make them in a just and constructive manner, and we will follow it up until we achieve results. Now, not in all cases, the results are going to be what we're expecting, but we're not doing too badly at the moment. Now, I'm going to leave it there because we want to spend more time on Q&As than you having to listen to the likes of me and anyone else rabble on, to be perfectly honest. So I just want to thank you for joining us this evening. Let's have a wonderful and constructive meeting, and let's move this forward to ensure that we get justice for the Windrush, for those caught up in the Windrush scandal. But also moving forward, we have to ensure that that playing field of inequality is leveled, and we need to do that together. So that's all I've got to say. So thank you for listening. I'm now going to ask Thomas Gregg, who's the head of Windrush compensation. He can unmute, and Thomas, over to you.
So thank you, Bishop Desmond, and thank you, Reverend Clive. I'm really pleased to be here and really pleased to be speaking at a WNO event. Even in my short period working in this area, I've heard a lot about the really good work that the WNO do. So I'm really pleased to be here, and thanks again for inviting me. I'm conscious, looking at the names on the list, that I have spoken to some of the people on this call, and indeed have been at similar events with some of the people on this call already, but also conscious that there will be those that I haven't. So there'll be, I suspect, a range of levels of knowledge and understanding about the scheme on the call. So I will try and briefly set out some information about where we are currently and about some of the history of the scheme. I'll try to do that in a way that those that are new to this will get enough information, but those that have heard this before won't be bored or won't be frustrated by the presentation. So please do bear with me. What I would say, and David and Azar are on the call and they can assist with that, is if you're someone who's on this call who is thinking of applying for the scheme, either for the immigration scheme or the compensation scheme, and require a proper explanation of exactly how to do that and how it might work, then please do get in touch via the chat or via Bishop Desmond, either with my team or with David or Azar, and we can assist in doing that. So I certainly don't want, as I give you a kind of broad explanation of some of the things that are happening, I certainly don't want people who really want some detailed information to miss out on getting that at some point in the future. And I'm sure Bishop Desmond will be able to assist you in doing that. So as I was introduced, I am, I think I can just about still call myself the new head of the Windrush Compensation Scheme and Case Working Team. I've been in post responsible for the operations of the scheme since September, and responsible for the policy of the scheme since kind of early December. So I started around December the 1st, December the 2nd, being responsible for policy. So I will give you a bit of background on this compensation scheme first, and I will talk mainly about that because I think that's probably the main thing that people are interested in that are on the call today. But I will also touch on, and of course definitely take questions on, where I can, the task force and case working team with the assistance of Azar and David, who are much more expert in that field than I am now. So just on the compensation scheme, and I've said this on the other calls that I've been on, I do need to kind of reflect on the history of the scheme and where we are now. And I think I have to absolutely acknowledge to everyone that the scheme has not worked as it should have done over its first 18 months of operation. And I say that without any casting any aspersion on my predecessors or on colleagues who set up the scheme. I know that some people on the call will understandably not think that this is the case, but it is absolutely the case that what has been done with the best of intentions. But despite that, we have, I think, fallen short, and everyone would accept that in the first kind of 18 months of the scheme's operation. Now, we've made some big changes to the scheme. over the course of the last month or so, and we continue to work to embed those changes, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But we don't see that as the end. We want to continue to have an open dialogue with people about both any other fundamental issues that there are with the scheme, but also about how we're embedding those changes. We've already made some adjustments to our approach around some of those payments since we made the announcement, as a result of feedback from some of the people who've applied to the scheme and actually some of the people on this call. So we will definitely continue to do that and continue to try and find our way to a place where we are, doing what the scheme should do and what we want it to do, which is to provide compensation which accurately reflects people's experiences, and doing that in a timely manner and in a manner which requires, which does not, where possible, require people to have a difficult experience applying for compensation on top of the extremely difficult and very, very bad experiences they've had in their life. So that is my objective and our objective, and we will continue to try and achieve that. And just before I take you through some of the changes and the reasons for them, I should also just acknowledge that, I spend a lot of time talking about this, and I said when I spoke to some of the people on this call a couple of weeks ago that you'll have to start to see the change, I'm sure, before you believe it. And I think that is entirely understandable given the history of this issue and the history of this scheme. And I'm sure that many of you probably haven't seen enough of it yet. So I'll continue, as I say, to keep coming back to these events, to keep reflecting on what we're doing, and I hope as we go along, people will see more and more of what we've done and what we've chosen to do. So just to touch then on what we've done to change the scheme recently, and hopefully this will be helpful, particularly to those who haven't kind of heard this in detail before. So I think I reflected on this in many other forums. I think, again, with best intentions, there are three things that haven't worked as well as they should have done with the scheme in its first 18 months of existence. The first is it's taken too long for us to decide people's cases. The second is that when we have decided people's cases, the amount of money people are being offered in compensation does not match the stories that they're telling us. And just very simply, anyone reading the stories that we are being told and comparing them to some of the levels of payments we were making earlier would definitely, and certainly this was my experience, would definitely say that the payments themselves were not enough to compensate people for the experiences that they'd had. And the third issue, which I think is perhaps long-term the trickiest issue, is getting the balance right between making sure that we get the evidence that we need to prove that someone is entitled to the compensation that they will be offered, but to do that in a way which does not require us asking repeatedly for evidence that people don't have, and doesn't require people any more than they absolutely have to revisit very difficult experiences in their life. And so those three things, I think, are for me the top of my mind in what we've needed to do about the scheme. And so we've done then, I think, three changes to the scheme which address at least partially the first two issues, but there is still some work to do in that area. So the first change we've done, and people will be very aware of this, we have introduced a interim payment. So that's what we call a preliminary payment rather than interim payment. And what that means is that new applicants to the scheme within the first 6 weeks from their application will be considered for that payment. And what we will do is we will look at whether someone can show that there's been any impact on their life as a result of their inability to demonstrate their status. And if they have, we'll pay them a £10,000 payment, which is the minimum payment on the impact on life scale at that stage. And that's effectively the first chunk of their compensation being paid as early as possible in the process. For the applicants who are already in the process, so who are already have applications pending or indeed have had offers made to them, there are a variety of approaches that we are taking to their cases. And we wrote to all the applicants that were pending and all the applicants that had previously applied to the scheme and received an offer at the time that we made the announcement, setting out individual timescales for what would happen to them and when it would happen. And That letter is also linked on our website, and people can find it via the WCS, the Windrush Compensation Scheme fact sheet. And what we've undertaken to do, just to give some kind of headlines on that, is that everybody who is currently, or whose application was pending on the 15th of December, will either receive consideration for a preliminary claim, or they will receive consideration for a full and final offer, or the vast majority will by the end of March, and we are on track to deliver that. Now, we've already made, in terms of offers, hundreds of offers across preliminary offers and revised offers for applicants who'd previously had an offer or who were close to the end of the scheme. And I'm very confident that for those people, and I should just say that when I say that people whose cases were pending, that is people who had made claims in their own right or as a deceased estate claim. So those people will all get either a preliminary offer or a full and final offer, or will be told that they've been considered for that and the reasons that they haven't been able to receive that by the end of March, and I'm confident we'll do that. Now, I think there's just a couple of things worth touching on there. The first is that naturally, as some of these offers start to go out, some people will get them before others. And I understand that for people that have been waiting a really long time, if they see someone else get an offer before they do, they may find that really frustrating. And I can only apologise for that. We are working as hard as we can to get through the cases that we have in front of us. And as I say, we are making good progress. We also have taken on some new staff. We took on 17 new administration staff the week before last to assist with the payments, and they're helping us to drive the numbers up. But I do understand people's frustration, but we do have to work through the cases in the time that we have, and we will continue to do that. The second, and I do think this is where we are thinking about how we are approaching this at the moment, is that obviously some people will get an offer of a preliminary payment, but some people who are closer to the end of the process and or who have previously received an offer will receive a revised final offer rather than that preliminary payment immediately. Now, again, many people have been content with this that we've spoken to and have indeed accepted those revised offers. Others, I think, have raised some quite legitimate concerns about, wishing to challenge their offer. And if they do wish to challenge their offer, are they entitled to the £10,000 preliminary payment? And we're talking to the team about where we can provide that to people when they do want to turn down an offer that they've received, even if it is a revised offer under the scheme. So we continue to work through the group of cases that we have, and we will continue to provide we will start, hopefully, I hope soon, to provide some kind of public updates on the numbers that we've got through so that people can see them. So we'll continue to do that. Now, the second thing that we've done, and I sort of touched on this a bit before, is we've increased the level of payment at all levels of the impact on life scale. So we've moved from a 6-point scale, which started at £250 and finished at £10,000, to a scale which starts at £10,000 and is a 5-point scale and finishes at £100,000, with the option for us to pay more should there be exceptional circumstances. And so what that means is that everyone who is going to be or has been offered compensation or has been paid compensation previously and has been offered will get or will end up with a higher reward than they had previously. And that is what we are trying to do, at least to start, to address some of those issues around the size of payments. And then the third thing we've done, which partially touches on the size of payments, but also a bit on the issues I spoke to you about evidence at the earlier, is that we've made some quite technical but quite significant changes to the employment rules around the scheme. So what we've done is there were previously 2 different standards of proof in the scheme, and we've removed the higher standard of proof. So everything is done on the balance of probability. We've removed we've removed what was a previous 1-year cap, where under certain circumstances where people were getting a general award where they couldn't evidence their specific salary, we would only previously pay them for 12 months, and now we're paying them for the amount of time they were out of work. And in totality, what we hope that change does is mean that if someone has been out of work as a result of not being able to evidence their status, we are paying much closer to the actual amount that they would have lost through that period, and the actual amount that they would have lost looking at their actual salary where we can, or a general award where we can't, but looking very crucially at the specific amount of time that they were in employment and trying to be much more flexible about the evidence that we'll accept for that. So those are the kind of three big changes. As I say, I think broadly, I hope that they will start to address for people the timeliness of the scheme, the level of the payments, and also then kind of a little bit on the evidence front. But I think there is much more evidence. There's much more work to be done around evidence and how we interact with applicants or with people that have applied to the scheme. And just to say, I think, you know, and I've said this on fora before, and again, people have challenged me on this, and I understand why they would do this, but I can only talk to my own experience. When I speak to caseworkers and the people who are dealing with the scheme, they're very committed to trying to maximise the payments that they make to people, and they understand very much how significantly wrong the people they're talking to have been. But I also recognise that when people talk to me, their experience of dealing with the scheme can on occasion, and certainly probably on more than occasion, doesn't feel like that. They feel very differently about it. They feel that that they're being asked for too much evidence, that people are not being sympathetic in the way that they ask for that, and they're not being sympathetic in the way that they're dealt with. And as I say, I think we need to address where we can. We need to try and address where we can people's, you know, that, so that what we are trying to do with the scheme comes across to each and every person that we're talking to and that we're dealing with. So this is kind of where we are at the moment. We'll continue to take views from people, as broad a range of people as we can, listen as much as we can to the victims, and do what we can to continue to develop the scheme. I hope, and certainly the experiences of some of the people we've already spoken to who have received revised offers and have received preliminary offers, we have heard, you know, we have heard some concerns from people, but we've also heard some very positive things from people about how they feel that's changed their experience of the scheme. I hope that as people continue to see that, and as we continue to be a listening organisation, we can make the changes and give the explanations that people want and people need. I won't try and answer any of the questions in the chat yet. I might just let David come in and talk a bit about some of the practicalities around the task force, and then I can come back and presumably allow kind of Bishop Desmond or Reverend Clive to take us through those questions. As I say, this won't be the last you see of me. I'm due to do, I think, an event once a week for at least the next 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm sure many of us will be in the same place at the same time. So if I can't quite answer some of the questions today, we'll certainly put them in writing on the website here and in as full as we can. And obviously people will continue to have the opportunity to question me, raise issues with me, and challenge me on what we have or haven't done. So we just need to get going. Okay, thanks. Just move on to ask David if he wants to add anything.
Thanks, Tom. Evening, everybody. I'll be brief in this, in the terms of viewing this screen. There's a lot of people, just to reiterate what Tom has said, who I've seen on this platform before, and it's good that these people are here. It's also good to see new faces as well. So I will just very briefly just go over the operations of the now termed help team, but when it initially set up was called the task force. We're about providing the support for people who have been unable to demonstrate their lawful status in the country. Well, I'm assuming people know the whole background of the Windrush scandal. It was never stating that people were not here legally. The issue was that people could not demonstrate their legal status. So the task force or help team has been set up to help people obtain that documentation, so their status is no longer an issue. We have worked very closely with Bishop Reverend Jadu and Reverend Clive Foster, even before the creation of the National Windrush Organisation. And I'm always grateful for the opportunity to thank these gentlemen and the subsequent organisation they created for the support they've helped provide to our operations. Let's be right about things. The reputation of the Home Office amongst many BAME people is very, very poor. I and myself and my colleague Azar, as part of the outreach unit, which works on meeting communities and people and providing that face-to-face support before COVID, recognise that our abilities to meet these people, to meet any people, would have been severely hamstrung if it wasn't for the support provided. So I am very, very grateful. I always say this, for the support. And to reiterate what the Bishop has said, we have had differences of opinion because the National Windrush Organisation is not a paid lackey. It is not in any way in the pockets of the Home Office. It's an independent body which has similar priorities in terms of providing support to individuals. However, they are not and have never been shy of putting challenge to the Home Office when they see the Home Office not doing what it should be doing, or what it's not perceived to be doing what it should be doing. So I'm grateful for the support and I'm grateful for the challenge. And I always say, as uncomfortable it is on these meetings for us, if we're getting questions that are difficult, if the questions need to be asked, please ask the questions. Because if somebody doesn't ask the question, that's not to say somebody else hasn't thought of the question, or they may be slightly shy to ask the question. So please, please, if there's a question which you feel is relevant, please ask. I would always only ask that the question is structured in a way that affords us the time to answer, or we were allowed to actually take it away and come back. We're here to actually build the support and build, hopefully, try and restore some faith in our operations. I know it's a long, long, long road. I know this. My parents, they were impacted. So I know, I've lived through some of the issues. So I know, and I know the levels of angst and anguish which my parents experienced. So please, let's not get it twisted. I am not in a position to say, oh, the Home Office is brilliant, etc., etc., etc. There are things it hasn't done well. But I'm here to say we are trying now to rectify this. We're trying now to move this thing on. We can stay here and we can harangue and basically bombard the whole office with saying it should be doing this, should be doing that, and not add any positivity. I want us to work in concert because I want people to get what they are entitled to, what they should have. Bottom line, how we get there has to be done in concert. So please, please, please feel free and encouraged to contribute to things like this. Maybe not this one, maybe another one. Organise other ones. Involve us, because we need to have the input and the support of the communities. So please get on board. Please feel free, and please know that we are genuinely trying to make things better. Yes, there is a long way to go. Yes, we're starting from a not a very good position, but we are trying to get things right. Questions of status need to be answered. So if people have issues in status, please post them as well. Thank you. I'll just hand back on that. Just quickly say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, David. Over to you, Clive.
Thank you very much, Bishop Desmond. So Tom and David, but particularly Tom, we're going to go quick fire into some of the questions in the chat. I'm aware that we have people who have raised their hands. We will get to you, but we want to get to some of these questions in the chat, and myself and Bishop Desmond will be doing a bit of a double act, trying to get through the chat ones. We'll see how we go first of all. So Tom, first question from Charlotte is, we know that pensions and savings are not compensated for, but what is the reason for them not being compensated for, especially if evidence is given to show money was used or lost?
So I'll put some more detail in writing on this when we respond. And Charlotte, I know I also owe you a reply. We have been corresponding, so I'll try and give you a bit more detail in writing. But broadly, for the question of savings and pensions, where people have spent their savings as a result of not being able to work, the principle would be that we would seek to compensate them on the basis of that loss of earnings. So while they wouldn't be compensated directly for the money that they took out of their savings, they would be compensated for the earnings they lost that in effect required them to take that money out of their savings. Now, I'm conscious that in the past, because of the way that we have applied the rules around employment, it may well have been the case, and there may well still be cases, and I will continue. I think Charlotte's talked about a specific case you're talking about as far as I can, where that recompense for loss of earnings does not cover the amount that was cashed in from savings or pensions. So I would want to look at kind of specific circumstances and make sure we were clear on that. But as a general principle, the way the scheme operates is that we would seek to recompense people through the loss of earnings, which would then, we would hope, certainly now that we've changed the scheme, would then effectively make up the amount that was taken out of the savings in order to substitute for those earnings. But I'd like to put that in writing in a bit more detail to everyone, and then they can have the opportunity to come back to me on that.
Thanks a lot, Tom, and obviously that will go onto our website once we get that full explanation. Another quick one is, can you explain to us what is considered as exceptional circumstances, which is stated we must reach if to meet tariff level 5?
So just to say on that, so tariff level 5 is the highest level of impact on life. When we talk about exceptional circumstances, that would actually be a payment that would go beyond tariff level 5 in certain circumstances. Now, the descriptors for tariff level 5, I won't read them through. They're on the website and on the fact sheet. It represents a kind of very, very significant impact on an individual that's very long lasting and perhaps permanent in some cases. And so those are the descriptors that our team use when they consider where to put a case on that scale. And it is a very difficult thing to do. I recognise that to quantify and measure very serious impacts on people's lives is really difficult. And so, you know, we seek to do it as well and as fairly as we can. But, you know, we want to continue to talk to people about how we do that. What I did say, and I think this is from Chris, and I said this in the press in Windrush, and I do still need to pull this out, is to try and get some anonymized examples of people who have reached that threshold, so people can see the kind of cases that have reached that threshold. Now, we have started to try and do that, but it is a bit tricky because we don't want to do it in a way that breaches the confidentiality of the individual, but we do want to provide people with a bit more of a practical explanation of what kinds of people have found themselves in that upper bracket, as there have been people who have. So again, that's probably something I'll provide a bit more detail in writing, but we will try and go beyond the kind of bare statement that is in the kind of bare statement that's in the table, and move on to something that provides some worked examples. And again, we'll try and do that certainly in writing in response to this meeting, and before I come back and talk to the Preston group, who I think Chris, who wrote this question, is also a member of.
Okay, we've got Dawn Hill asking a very common question, obviously on the back of the turbocharged compensation that we've heard in the press. Dawn is saying, when will we have an update on the numbers of people who have been compensated and how many are waiting? And have they had their 10,000 payment recently announced?
Okay, so just a couple of points on this. I will answer the question, so please don't mistake that I'm not going to. I will respond to the point about numbers. So just to give an idea of the process here, and I think it is important to explain what happens around offers and payments in the scheme. Many of you will know this, but I think it is good to explain it. So before we pay anyone any money, we do have to make them an offer, even if we are, you know, almost certain to 99% certain they will accept it. So even where we are simply uprating someone's payment, where they've already accepted a payment and we're just increasing it as a result of the new rules, we still need to write to them and say, do you accept this payment and what are your bank details? So the first bit of the process for a £10,000 preliminary payment, for example, is there is a brief assessment of the case by a caseworker. They look at that case and they decide whether an individual or whether a person does meet the very minimum level for impact on life. That's quite a quick assessment in most cases. Once that's done, we write to that person and ask whether they wish to accept that offer, and we ask them to provide their bank details. Once they've done that, it comes back to us. We then will phone the person to check that we have the details right. we'll make the payment, and from the point that we make the payment, it can take up to a couple of weeks for that to come through to the individual because of the way that the payment systems work. So it's certainly not, what we can't do, unfortunately, much as I would like to, is simply press a button and pay people. And we do always need to check with people that they're willing to accept the money and where to pay the money to. So there are a number of processes that we kind of go through. In terms of where we are currently around preliminary and increased payments. So we're both making preliminary payments and making increased offers and payments to people who have already had offers. We'll hope to publish something on that in the next couple of weeks. We're due to publish our statistics that we publish monthly next Thursday, I think, but that won't cover much of this activity because it's the work that was done in December and the payments that were made in December. So we'll seek to publish a bit more data or a bit more information around how we've got on since we've made the announcement. But as I said earlier, we've made hundreds of offers, both preliminary and uplift, of some quite significant value thus far. We've got extra people into the scheme to work on the admin. They started the week before last and they're already being very productive. And I'm really confident that that kind of key target that I have in mind for dealing with estates or primary claimants and having considered them all for something by the end of March is definitely on track and something that we're monitoring very, very carefully. You'll appreciate that there's certain protocols about how we publish numbers, so I don't give like real granular detail here, but I hope that we will be able to, and we're talking to our stats colleagues about being able to put some information about numbers in the public domain to reassure people we are moving forward in the next couple of weeks.
And where will we find that published information that you'll be sending out next week, Tom?
Well, so as I say, we haven't finalised what we're doing, and we're not definitely going to do it. So the stats release, which we do regularly, is published and goes on our website. I think what we will most likely do if we want to release further information is release that via the fact sheet, or via updating the Windrush Compensation Scheme fact sheet that's online. But again, we're talking to colleagues about this because it is unusual to put any numbers in the public domain outside of a formal stats release. But we do want, where we can, to provide people with information and to reassure them that that this is happening and that people are starting to get offers and payments.
Thanks.
But as I say, I mean, just to reiterate, the offer comes first and then the payment. So we have made hundreds of offers, and we are also making payments as a result of those offers.
So, but we should be expecting at least some information of figures in terms of who's been paid out before March, which is a deadline that you have in terms of
that's so I need to be really careful here, Clive. That's my intention, that's what I want to do, but there are lots of other people involved in this, so let's just make sure that I don't want to make promises that I can't keep on that, but I do definitely want to do it.
Great. I'm just going to ask one more question before I bring Bishop Desmond in. There's a general question you can appreciate. Okay, there's been a change to the compensation, but people still, Chris is saying, why is it that they haven't addressed the problems that still makes the scheme very unfair and difficult? Perhaps we might need a bit more specifics around that, but I think you've kind of outlined to us that you've acknowledged that there is issues still, even though there has been this uplift to the scheme. Just some feedback around that. Okay, there's a question here from Christine, and then I'm going to bring in Bishop Desmond. Why, when you apply for compensation, you have different case workers that deal with your case, and not just one worker dealing with the case?
So that is a good question, and I think in an ideal world it would just be one person. I think the real issue is that it's not hugely efficient to do it that way, and so one of the things, and this just to answer to raise a slightly different point before I go on to answer the question, alongside what we're doing about preliminary payments, I also want to just speed up the way that the scheme operates. As I say, for very good reason, it's taken a really long time for us to make decisions. But even once we've done a preliminary payment, that shouldn't give us an excuse, give us a get out to not then be speeding up payments in general. So we are looking at how we can best use the resource we have in the scheme, the experienced people we have, to make as many decisions as possible. And what that means is effectively we do occasionally have to move cases from one person to the other, because what we don't want to do is have someone available to do some work, but not doing work on a case because it kind of belongs to someone else. So as far as possible, we want, particularly within, cases being owned in the same caseworking teams, to provide some continuity. But we do need sometimes to move cases around in order to ensure that we're being efficient and things aren't getting stuck, basically, and there will be a bit more of that going forward.
Right. Right, we're going to go to some of the hands which are up. For my sins, I didn't catch the order they were in. So I'm just going to go what's on my screen, the order I can see. So we've got WM Mohammed. If you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question. And please, these are questions that we need asking, because we want everyone to have an opportunity to ask a question tonight as much as possible. Mohammed.
Good evening, everyone. I've been observing the Windrush claims, and ever since David Lammy introduced the idea in the Houses of Parliament. It's shocking that if you look at the statistics of how much has been paid out since the initial flag raising, or the attention being raised regarding the plight of those people who have just been ejected out of the British colonies, or not the British colonies, of England specifically, even though they are a part of the colonies. How come only 3% have had payments? That basically means that literally nothing has been paid. Probably only Mr. Lammy's family has been paid, and a few of his mates. So the 3% is what I'm really looking at. Even though we can have all of these meetings and these Zoom meetings, the reality of the situation is, it's how many years now? 2 years, and only 3% have been paid. Does that resonate with anybody as being righteous or being just for people that have suffered and died and actually been servants to the Crown and helped the United Kingdom in whatever capacity? At the moment, I'm working on one case, which is I think this is a general run-of-the-mill behavior of the Crown or the British government, is that they criminalize innocent people so that they would be in total indebted to a system that is totally against them. This goes beyond racism. This enters into the areas of terrorism, almost terror over decades. It's not just terrorism here. The terrorism continues when they go back to their own homes. The amount of compensation has to equate what has been done. It has to equate. 3% does not equate anything. And so I'm calling on David, I'm calling on Bishop Jadu, I'm calling on this representative, Mr. Thomas Craig. Although we can go into semantics all day. We can speak about and do speeches on Zoom meetings all day.
Nadim,
that's not going to resolve people's.
Nadim, can I just interject there?
Yeah, carry on.
Nadim, we need to get the questions asked. So what you're...
Yeah, I mean, 3%. Why is it only 3%?
Right. Why is it only 3%? Thank you for that. Tom, before I come to you, I'll ask someone else just to jump in and ask a question as well. And please, I will jump in if the questions aren't being asked. Thank you, Nadim. Anthony Williams.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hi, Tom. We've spoken on previous occasion.
We have.
this is not a question really. It's just a response to an email that you actually sent to me. When we actually spoke, you asked me to send you some details about my case, which I actually did. 7 days later, you responded to the email, and you addressed none of the issues raised in my email, which I found really disappointing. Further to that, the email that you actually sent me, it was generic. You know, it's stuff I've heard before. It's waffle. It doesn't make sense to me because I'm not a fool. And I truly believe that you're treating us like idiots. You know what I mean? Because the stuff that we discussed at Zoom meeting, it's the exact stuff you wrote back to me with, which made no sense. You wasted 7 days of my life waiting for a response, which made no sense. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm actually an ex-military person, and I was on a course once, and someone said something to me once was, well, piss poor planning leads to piss poor performance. And this is where we're at the moment. You've planned nothing. Your performance is poor. You need to get a grip, because we are frustrated. There are many other people out there with the same frustrations that I have. You mean you're obsessed about evidence? I can't believe how obsessed you people are about evidence. For an example, I had no access to medical treatment. I had a problem, dental problem. But yet you still want evidence. I had no access, Tom. And if that's happening to me, and the other people it's actually happening to. That's just my point. Thanks. Desmond, you can move on.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, you've asked a question there, actually. So, Tom, over to you. 3%, do you think that this is about performance, these two questions are. So is 3%, you know, so far good enough in terms of, you know, responses and payments? And also as well, the email standardized, as Anthony's asking, talking about standardized email responses.
So let me start from the 3% point. So the first thing I would say is that I recognise the scheme hasn't gone fast enough. So I do think the scheme should go quicker, but I don't accept the 3% number. I think it is if I could just explain a bit more about where I think that comes from and then what we have actually done in the scheme. But I will do that while starting with a really, really clear acceptance that we do need to go quicker and we haven't gone quick enough. So I am not saying that everything is fine with the scheme in saying this. However, I believe the 3% number comes from a comparison of the number of payments under the compensation scheme to the number of individuals that have received a document under the what was previously the task force is now the case working team. So about 11,500 people have had a document as a result of applying through the task force. And I think that then compared to the number of payments, or which is around between 200 and 300, is where that number comes from. I think it's just important to note that the task force and the compensation scheme are different schemes, and that there are people who are eligible to get a document through the task force who are not eligible or are not entitled to compensation, rather, because they won't have had any detrimental effect as a result of not being able to prove their status. And for example, there are quite a significant number of people who've applied through the task force and got a document who are European nationals, who are EEA nationals, who've been here for a long time, and they would have always been able to prove their status and therefore would not be eligible for a form of compensation, but they have chosen to exercise their right to get a different and improve a different document from the one they currently hold. So I think it's important to note that they're two different schemes and they work separately. On just some of the numbers around the compensation scheme, and I'll talk generally here. And again, I recognise that this could and should be much better. So we've received just over 1,800 applications under the compensation scheme, 1,800. We've made decisions on somewhere between 600 and 700 of those cases. So a decision is either a decision not to award, a decision that an individual is ineligible, or a final offer rather than a payment. So we've made a decision on around 600 of them. I think about 40% of cases that we've received a decision, and we've concluded about 20% of cases that we've received. So where a conclusion is either where we haven't made a payment and that has gone through the review process and the person's been unsuccessful in those reviews, or where the payment's been accepted and we've done it. So while I accept the numbers could and should be higher. It's not 3%, it's 20% concluded, and about 40% have had a decision made, and the total number of applications is 1,800. So that's just some clarity for people and a bit of a better understanding of the numbers and volumes. So, Mr. Williams, I'm really sorry that you think the letter I sent you was generic. I have spent a lot of time looking at your case, actually, and I think I do understand it quite well. I am keen that I don't want to talk in too much detail on this call, but we are due to write to you and to your representatives very shortly with some revisions, which I hope will address some of the points that you've made.
Tom, excuse me. I'm honestly right, Tom. If you send me an offer of £1 million tomorrow, I'll still turn it down. But simple reason, you're not treating us with respect. That's what we want. We want some kind of respect out of this. I mean, you're treating us as fools, and I can't accept it anymore. I've waited. Come this April, it'll be 2 years. It's not acceptable anymore, Tom. You come on this platform, and all we hear is waffle, waffle, waffle. I've had enough of it.
So look, I accept that, and you know, I hear it. I would want to then try and understand what we could do to progress your case and what it is that we need to do to try and improve that situation.
Can you prove the fact that what you're saying, 20%, it's written on documentation that 3% has been paid out? I don't know where you're coming out with 20%. There is no proof of what you're saying.
Well, okay. I mean, I can put it in writing. It is correct. I don't know where the 3%. I mean, I genuinely, if you can provide me with the documentation that talks about the 3%, then I'm really happy to have a look at it and to respond to that in detail.
Well, can I just say, thank you, Tom. Can I just say, questions of that nature, Mohammed, we will pose those to the Home Office, and the Home Office will be asked to put that in writing. And that's a part of holding the Home Office to account. Please, I know passions will run high, but do indicate to me if you wish to speak and not just jump in. Glenda Caesar, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Desmond. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
My question is in relation to really the caseworkers, because it doesn't seem that what I want to know is a turnaround of when an application goes in, how soon afterwards is a case allocated a caseworker? Because what we're finding is that the new cases that are going in, they may be waiting 2-3 months down the line. And when they do have to make the call, they are being told that there isn't a caseworker hasn't been allocated as yet. There is also another query in relation to, because in this we're going through a pandemic and the post has been really rubbish. So people are getting correspondence, but it's coming through maybe, well, not maybe, it is coming through about a month later from the task force team. Whereas things could have speeded up a lot quicker if you had just been sent an email. Every application form that is submitted, you ask for details, phone numbers and email addresses, and that's submitted. And what we're finding is that they're not sending emails out. They're sending letters, which is a long delay for the claimants, especially the new claimants. So my question is about the caseworkers. What is the turnaround once an application has gone in? And also if you can make the changes and send out emails as well as sending out a letter, because it's quicker for someone to receive an email and respond to your office, or if it's an offer letter, or if it's anything else, they can respond quicker.
So can I do the last? I'll do the last one first, if that's okay, Glenda. I agree with you, actually. I've been pushing this with the team quite a lot recently because it's taken like 14, 20 days sometimes for posts to get to people at the moment. And so I've been corresponding with people saying, well, your offer has been made. And they've been saying, well, no, it hasn't. And it turns out that it's somewhere lost in the post. The issue around emails is that we have to be a bit careful about sending out sensitive information on emails. So we need to validate that the email addresses we've got are correct before we send them. But I have asked the team to put some time into making sure that we're doing that as early in the process as possible. And where people want to be contacted by email, we're doing that. Because at the moment, you're right, it can take quite a long time for a written offer to get to someone, and the quicker we can act on something, the better. In terms of allocation to caseworkers, so I'll probably better off putting this in writing in something that can go up on the website, but just to give you a bit of background to the process. When it first comes in, it's dealt with by a separate team, and you're probably a little bit aware of this already, a team that's based in Sheffield, and they do the initial checks on the case to make sure that the person is someone who's eligible, so someone who falls within the kind of cohort that's eligible in terms of their immigration status. And then they do some of the very initial checks, and then the case is moved across to the case working team in Leeds. And initially that case is owned by a team rather than by an individual, and that team will look after it and take whatever actions are needed on it. And then at the point that it's ready for a decision, it moves to an individual. I can't give you right now an exact detail of how long it takes for each of those bits of the process, but I will seek to put something in writing that better explains it. But as I say, it does an initial triage in Sheffield, goes on to a team to be held there in Leeds, and they take some actions on it, and then when we have a caseworker available to deal with it, it moves to the caseworker specifically on that team in Leeds.
Well, that's just a generic answer. Can I just ask you one more thing in relation to close family members, because a lot of people don't know that if they're a primary claimant, that their other family members can make applications as well.
They can.
So what's the turnaround on that when a close family member submits an application for compensation? Me personally, if the primary claimant is known to the task force team, then there shouldn't be it should be a quicker response. I don't know if you've broken your teams down into departments, which I would have found easier to have done. Primary claimants, close family members, estates. But it doesn't seem to be working like that as far as I'm concerned. And this is not only with me personally, but with people who have come to me and we've put in applications. It just doesn't seem to be working fast enough, Tom. And we were hoping that it would have done, because that's the promise that we was made. But it doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem like the claims are being fast enough, or it's not organized as far as I'm concerned. That's just my view from seeing what I'm seeing.
So as I said at the beginning, like, I definitely recognise that we need to go quicker. And once we've got through dealing with preliminary applications for preliminary payments for people that are currently pending, we need to continue to press to get their cases dealt with as quickly as possible. Close family members are on the same timescale as everyone, really. We don't separate our casework like that, although it might be something we should think about, I guess. At the moment, the way we separate our casework is that two of our teams are dealing with full decisions at the moment. One is dealing with preliminary offers to cases that are already pending under the scheme, and one is dealing with uplifting payments to people that have already been made. But as they move on from that, we'll move them into other areas of work. But no, close family members just are at the same pace as everyone. I am conscious, though, that some of them have been waiting a long time and they're not eligible for a preliminary payment. So we do want to try and move some of the older close family members through the system much more quickly than we have by now, and we are looking at how we can do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
Right, we're going to go to Guy and then Jackie. Take two questions, please. We've got half an hour, so let's limit our questions. If there's anything lengthy, please put it in the chat. So Guy, you first, and then Jackie. Just unmute yourself, please, Guy.
Tom, the question about tariff level 5, how does one qualify for that category? You said, if I'm paraphrasing, is for extreme cases. Now, what do you define as extreme cases? And I'll just try and understand, put forward my understanding. Someone who's lost their job, lost access to healthcare, compromised or even denied their pension access. And in the worst case, someone who's died. I'm questioning, shouldn't everyone who've undergone this disgraceful treatment by the Windrush debacle, should they not all be under category 5, tariff 5? How do you water that down?
So, sorry, Bishop Desmond, do you want to take more than one question?
Tom, we're taking two. So Guy, have you finished your question? Because I'm going to move on to Jackie.
My question is, how do you define an extreme individual's case for tariff level 5?
Okay, I've got that written down. We'll ask Tom to answer that in a second. We'll go to Jackie. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, chairs or co-chairs and the Home Office and everybody on the chat. Lovely to see everybody. It's really nice to see the grassroots organisations, the activists, the lawyers, the Home Office all coming together to try and see how we we might resolve this. I have two apologies. I'm going to have to go in a minute because I have stuff in the oven, and I'm also a support network for doctors, for children, for my children and son-in-law and daughter-in-law who are working tonight for the NHS, trying to keep it going during this difficult period. So I'm going to have to disappear. But I just wondered if we could have a minute or two discussion on what is, I'm still quite in, I think part of the answer might be that the Windrush scheme was open to anybody to apply. And so I understand that lots of Italians and Europeans, and other Europeans rather, have applied to it. But we've got a figure of how many people have gone through the scheme and how many people have applied for compensation. And there's such a big gap between those two figures. And I don't know if we can be given some data as to how many people can we discount who would have a possible compensation claim in terms of, you know, not necessarily being Commonwealth, but just using the scheme because they were allowed to. And therefore, what can we do? Because at the moment, if we look at the raw data of about 13,000 people having gone through, and only about 1,800 people having applied for compensation, I'm wondering what's happened to all the rest. So my question's in two parts. Have you seen, it may have been, and I know when I've been doing the surgeries with Miss Hill at the Black Cultural Archives, people have come in and said they're not going to bother, you know, if we say to them, we think you might only be level 1 or what have you, although I take Guy's point about the levels. So have you seen an increase in people since the Home Secretary made that announcement on the 14th of December, which effectively, you know, sort of made the scheme, I don't want to say more attractive, because I don't think any amount of money is ever really going to compensate for what people have suffered. But in one sense, it has made it a little bit, you know, sort of, it makes more sense to make an application with the new tariffs, particularly on impact on life. That was the first thing. And secondly, what can we do? What can all of us, because you've got a wide breadth, I mean, there's quite a lot of people on this chat, and I can see, because some of them I've come across before, represent very different spheres of life, and really good people who can really be helping to pull the numbers. Do we think that there are people out there who are not applying? And what do we think might be, has the Home Office done any work, any I don't know, sociological work, or done any testing? What is preventing? I don't understand what is preventing people from coming forward and making an application. And I just wondered if you know, if the Home Office has done any work on this and might have an idea, but also, have you seen any increases in applications?
Jackie,
so thanks, Jackie.
Tom, just to reiterate what the questions are so that everyone's satisfied. What is an extreme case above tier 5? And then the gap, is there any explanation for the gaps between status applications and compensation applications? And what work is the Home Office undertaking, or have they undertaken sufficient study to see if they can increase applications on compensation?
Okay, so I'll do the last one first and then move on to the tariff tables. So the answer, so the first answer is, have we seen more applications since the announcement? Yes, but not at a hugely significant level. So just to give people a rough idea, I think November, again, I'm quoting numbers here that I wouldn't stand these up as a total detail, but November was about, I think we got about 40 applications. December, we've got about 80, and January so far, we're up to about, I think, 60 as of this morning-ish. Now, so we have seen an increase, but if you compare that to the first month's worth of applications, which were April 2019, that was about 200. So we're not at that level yet. I would say that I don't think the impact of the announcement will wholly be seen yet, because as we know, it does take people some time to gather evidence together and to put their form together. And I think what that means is that we've seen some people who already had a form and were already working on it, putting theirs in as a result of the announcement, but new people who have decided to newly make applications, I don't think we've seen the full impact of that yet. So it's probably a bit early to tell. We have seen increased traffic on our website. The calls to the helpline were, I think, triple the week after the announcement, and many of those calls were about potential new applications. And anecdotally, we think, from what some of those people have said, that they were doing just what Ms. Mackenzie said, which is that they were basically they were people who didn't think it was worth applying for compensation under the previous tariff and now think that it is. So I think that is important to kind of point that out, and I do think we'll see increases. The second thing to say about that is that I think increases are good. I want more people to apply for the scheme, and it does bother me, I think, in the same way that it has been mentioned that there is such a gap between the number of people that have got documents and the number of people who have applied, and I think it's hard not to think that there are more eligible people in that pool of people who have got documents or more people who would be entitled to compensation. So we have done some work on this, but I don't think enough yet, and we've been talking to colleagues about this. I think, we have been talking, and I've mentioned this to some people in school, we do want to start contacting people who've previously asked and downloaded application forms, and we do want to ask them ask them why they haven't then made an application. And I do think we've been speaking about recontacting in some way all of the people who have documents who are from countries which would render them potentially likely to have possible entitlement to compensation, and asking them, because I think you're right. I think it is something worth looking at as we try and increase our opportunity to try and encourage people to apply. And I think also that a lot of the groups around this table, the WNO and the groups that belong to WNO, are really important to trying to do that as well. I might just, if it's okay, I am conscious of answering the question about tariff tables, but that question about why people are not applying, I think David or Azza might have an insight into that. David, I don't know if you're still on.
Yeah.
If you wanted to say anything.
I was about to start waving my hand. That question has been one which has been posed to the department and posed certainly by myself, and also, and I know they won't mention it themselves, but Clive and Desmond, in terms of uptake. And we've been looked at this for years now, because we've been going since April 2018. We've looked, and I don't know if you're aware, but there has in the last 3 or 4 months, been a major publicity campaign. £750,000 has been dedicated to this from the Home Secretary to try and get the message of Windrush out there again. My personal opinion, and this is what I mean, please accept this as it is. I am a Home Office official, and I'm here on the Home Office business, but I also have to be honest and have some sort of integrity, I hope. I've always felt that one of the issues one of the things which we haven't done correctly is actually advertise widely enough from the very get-go. And this is why I keep on saying about the contributions of Desmond and Clive and other bodies who've worked with us, has always been, in my opinion, slightly piecemeal. I have always felt we should have gone big and campaign, national campaigns, TV adverts, etc., etc. But it just hasn't happened. I don't know why it hasn't happened. But I would have felt that would be one of the more effective ways of at least getting the message out. And on the basis of that, we then follow it up with a continual campaign, continual messaging, because the experience of so many people, so many BAME people, has not just been over 5 or 6 years, it's been over lifetimes. And those kind of lifetimes experiences, which a lot of them being negative, are not washed away with a couple of weeks' work. It takes a long period of time. So I would certainly hope you'll see some difference now with this new campaign. We have launched the community fund, which has a £500,000 pot, which will be given to groups who apply to help push the Windrush message, because we're looking now to go out and then reach as many people as possible in any shape or form. But as I've always said, we are always open to suggestions, because we know our communities. We know how many people are hidden, how many people are still unsure, and how many people are just, a lot of people are confused and don't understand the full scheme. The full scheme is not just about Caribbean and Commonwealth people. It's about everybody. There's so many times I've had this conversation and I've said to people, well, do you know the full extent of the actual provisions? And people say, no, I only thought it was Caribbean because it says Windrush, or I only thought it was what, this and that. Our messaging needs to be smarter, and we are constantly looking to try and improve on it. So the revised campaign and the commitments via the community fund, etc., is the latest iteration of our attempts to communicate. But as I keep on saying, this is not a finished article. We are still evolving, and we are still open and welcome suggestions as to how we could do things better.
Thanks, David. We've got 15 minutes left, and then we have to sum up. There are several questions in the chat, but rest assured, those questions will be taken out of the chat at the end of this meeting, and they will be sent to the Home Office, alongside particularly, Guy, with the emphasis on your question, because I believe it's a question that you require an answer in writing, to be honest. Now, I've got 4 people who haven't asked questions yet. Mohammed, I know your hand's up, but you've already asked. So I'm going to take the questions in this order, and please, as brief as we can so that we can get through these. So I'm going to take the next 2 questions. I've got Chris, then I've got Suleiman. So Chris, if you'd like to unmute, please ask your question briefly, and then we'll go to Suleiman.
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
My question is very simple. My question is, why is it that the Home Office, when it comes to unemployment, they made the law that we should not, employers should not employ people who could not prove their status, and yet they now ask us to prove that we didn't get a job when it was law for us not to, for employers to prove that for us to prove that we had status to employers. This is very unusual that the Home Office know that they were going to fine employers over £20,000 for employing anyone that could not prove their status between 2012 to 2018. But for some reason, when you tell the Home Office, I couldn't get a job, they ask you to prove this beyond reasonable doubt. If you can't get employers to prove it, they will ring those employers, and those employers will then say, no, I didn't employ him because of that. It was because of other reasons. But really, what my question is why must we prove something that you clearly had in law? Because if I told you I had a job in 2014 and I could not prove my status, that employer has already deemed himself liable for a fine or imprisonment. So if this is the case, why do you assume that we would have a job? So my question is simple. Why is it that you are not taking the fact that most people who were in the Windrush scandal could not get a job? Why is it that you are not taking that as a way to say we should automatically compensate them for each year that they lost? Because we made it law. They didn't. That's all I've got to say. Thank you for allowing me to ask.
Thanks for that, Chris. And I've come across that as well in some of the reviews I'm helping out with at the moment. Over to you, Suleiman, and then we'll go back to Tom. Good evening. Can you unmute, please, Suleiman? Right, great.
Yeah, right. Good evening, all. Right, I've looked at what everybody has been discussing today, and I'm just going to be very straightforward, coming in as a judge. And I received this document today, and I don't mind displaying it. And I was asked, to prove my status from 1978. I've only had 2 jobs. And part of the reason why I couldn't get work is because in those days, from you mentioned Jamaican and you didn't have your paperwork, you weren't getting nothing, And at the same time, as a result of that, there was incarcerations. Now I'm asked to prove I've only had 2 jobs, 2 jobs in nearly 60 years, and obviously other issues I won't mention on here. And I've got this letter today. Now, I'm going to cut a long story short, right? The problem we have as claimants is, number one, because I'm studying and I'm not being eccentric here, you know what this is about, right? The system, they do not have us as live beings, number one. From the time we came over here, some of us Commonwealth, but we were entered in as the ward of the state. Until we change our status by having a live life claim, then we can move our bodies to a higher level. And then now we can put, not them bringing the task force to us, we put the task to them. Because let's face it, they're liable. And they're a commercial liability, there'll be no more Home Office. And I've got to tell you now, the UK, as it stands, is in liquidation. So they're in a lot of problem. So what I'm saying to you is all and everybody out there in Great Britain who have any type of knowledge on law, or in the bar, who are willing to make that sacrifice so that we can put these people who are liable, who has caused these problems, and then we'll be in a better position. We won't be into controversy, compensation. It's not about compensation. The Home Office is liable. And remember, there's nothing to fear because they're a corporation. They are our public servants. Look how we've served this country, and look at the way they've treated our parents and our ancestors before. And it's gone deeper than that. So what I'm about making the changes in the judicial realm. And I noticed that there's a bishop who is chairing this, right? Which puts himself in the ecclesiastical realm, and they need to have the judges have a look at this. And obviously we know that they're being governed by canon law. And unless these judges come in and sort this out properly, we can't leave it to the administration. So me personally, if they do not sort this out properly, and I have, plenty of evidence here, I am looking to collapse the trust. And once it's collapsed, there's punishment. Okay. In canon law, because now they've used what's Jadu? Is it Jadu? Yes. Jadu is a bishop, and he knows what I'm talking about. Because as I sit here, I sit in an ecclesiastical body. Yeah.
Suleiman.
Yeah, from Birmingham. Sorry,
Suleiman, we haven't got that much time.
All right, sorry. Well, I've just given you my position.
No, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for that. And don't feel I'm cutting you off. It's just I've got 3 hands up, and I just want to get through them.
All right.
Well, listen, I'm just going to be straight with everyone on the call. If you've got a question, and with the questions in the chat are going to the Home Office, you've got our email address, go to our website and put your question in there. We'll pull them off tomorrow and we'll send those to the Home Office as well. But the next person up, before I come back to you, Tom, is Judith, Julia, and Tamika. So I'm going to allocate each of you just over a minute each, please, to ask your questions, and then we'll put them all to Tom in one go. So Judith first, please.
Hello, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm asking more about my British citizenship position. I believe I am entitled to citizenship because my family settled in the UK in 1963. And I got my application rejected based on information that I didn't even understand. I was supposed to do an appeal. I did that appeal, and the appeal was even worse because it contradicted the rejection of the application. And reading all the information and all the links that I was sent, everything was so confusing that I mean, it's like it's like everything is just set up to frustrate and confuse people. There's no way you go this way, you lose, you go the other way, you lose. So I don't understand how, as I prove that I was settled way
over you, but you are breaking up my end. Can everyone hear us?
I had been
Sorry, you can't hear us.
Family.
Judith, can I stop you there, please? Because
Desmond, she's not coming across clear.
My family lives here, basically.
Yeah, can't hear it, Des.
Rejected on, I mean, when you read the letter, you wouldn't understand. You just know it's a generic letter. And that's what upsets me. Everything is generic. And in my case, I didn't know what we're talking about. It wasn't me.
Judith, we can't hear you.
Judith, we can't hear you.
Appeal, and the appeal comes out with completely different information that doesn't apply to me. This is what worries me.
Right. Judith, we can't hear you. Can we just move on? The next one was Julia, then Tamika, please. Judith, we can't actually hear you properly.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yep. So Julia, yep. Go ahead, Julia.
Thank you, Chair.
I don't know what else to do. I've been talking to myself.
Sorry. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We can, but we can move on, Judith.
Can you hear me now?
We've only got a couple of minutes left. So can we go to Julia, Tamika, and then I'll come back to you, please, Judith. I'll come back to you, Judith. Can we go to Julia and Tamika, please?
Thank you, Chair. It's just with reference to the announcement from the government. Now on the website, there is a £500,000 compensation or application for satellites all over the UK in order to apply for funding to enable us as units to go forward and identify clients who are still yet to put application forms in. Has the government, or can you feed this back, Thomas? Has the government taken into consideration how many units there are potentially all over the UK in order to put those applications forward? And if that is the case, the £500,000 that has been designated in which to do so, if every person in every city or one individual from every city all over the UK put in a claim, why is it still having to be approved by the Home Office to determine whether those satellites can go ahead? And secondly, how is that representative of an organisation going forward to identify the claimants who are still yet to have an application put in? So if one person out of every city was to put in a claim, surely that would be less than what the local authorities are getting. The local authorities are getting 25,000 yet again on the back note of Black people. How is that fair and justified? Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you very much. Tamika, and sorry, Tony, I did see your hand, so I am going to come to you. My apologies. So Tamika, then Tony, and then I'm going to have to close off the live questions. And Tom, just before we go to Tamika, are you able to just stay on for an extra 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, I can do. Maybe just 10 minutes, if that's okay, Bishop Desmond.
Fine, no problem at all. Thank you. Tamika, and then Tony, then we'll go back to Tom for the answers.
Yeah, I've got a question with regards to making the application on a whole. For example, I'll use myself as an example. My mom made an application in Jamaica. She was granted returning residency back to the UK. However, it proved so difficult for her children to get the same status that she was granted. If in turn, if you are a British citizen, you have a child, the child gets the status of the mother. Why in the case of a Windrush application, the children of a Windrush applicant, whether or not they were in the UK before the age of 16 can't get the status of the mother. Why is that the case? And however, and as well, second question is, how long does it take for you to be placed in a tier to be awarded some form of compensation? What's the time scale? Because we've had application in the Home Office for over 18 months, and we still getting letters regarding, can you prove you weren't employed? That's the second question. As well as, until a returning resident come back to the UK, no one have told us, and I've rang the Home Office numerous of times about an exceptional payment plan. We've never heard of it until one person from the grapevine, or speaking to someone who just said to us, oh, have you applied for an exceptional payment? That is a payment that you can apparently applied before they actually authorized your compensation claim. So yeah, that's my 3 questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to place those in a minute. Tony, would you like to unmute? Please ask. Tony can give you a couple of minutes, I'm afraid, and then we'll go to Tom for the answers. But we're capturing what you asked so that we can get it in writing. Would you like to unmute, please, Tony? Tony, you need to unmute. Great. Good evening, Tony. Is your microphone working? Right, your microphone's not working, Tony. Right, okay. Tony, if your mic starts working, just do say something, but do either put it in the chat or email us with the question. We'll make sure you get the answers. Tom, over to you. I mean, there's been questions regarding the community fund scheme, regarding families from Nigerian settlement. A lady saying she hasn't got settlement, although her family was here in 1963. Children born of Windrush generation families abroad who were British. We've got an ongoing case of that at the moment. And also as well, the whole perception issue around employment.
Bishop Desmond, can I just say, could you just check your WhatsApp message as well? Yes. Yeah, thanks.
Have a quick look.
So I'm going to try and pick up as much of that as possible, but obviously I know you're recording this, so it would be quite helpful if someone could just let me have the last 10 minutes so that I can make sure that I respond in writing to the ones that I don't cover now, because I have a little page of notes, but I'm not sure how well that will cover it. And obviously there's something a little bit distracting going on in the chat as well. So let me try and answer some of them though. So I think the last one of the questioners asked about how long it took for someone to get a decision. So as I say, it's taking too long at the moment. It's taking up to 18 months, but people with a pending case now should receive either a preliminary offer or a full and final offer by the end of March. I've put my email in the chat, so if that person wants to just drop me an email about their specific case, I should be able to provide them a bit more detail. I will try and reflect on Anthony's feedback earlier about emails being generic. I do look at the cases myself, so I'll try and make sure that it's much clearer when I respond that is the case to others. So yes, do drop me an email. I'll have a look at it. So then the community fund, I'm going to be a little bit. I might ask David if he can add to this. So the community fund is not my area of work. It's looked after my colleague Kate Ridley-Moy, who I think has come and spoken to you before. So I will get Kate to contribute to some answers to that, unless David wants to come in. And he may want to do so at the end of this. Judith, I didn't, I'm afraid, hear the details of your case, but I've sent you my email address again. If you come to me, I'd be very happy to come back, and I will again, seek to give you a personal response to it rather than the generic letters that you say you've been having. There were then a lot of questions about employment, and I won't seek to cover them in too much detail. And Chris, I know we've spoken about this before, and we'll no doubt continue to correspond and speak on the matter. We have tried now with the scheme to make it as easy as possible for people to evidence loss of employment, but the scheme is still designed, I accept, in a way where you do have to specifically show that you've lost a job or that you were unable to take a job because of issues in showing your status. And that is the way it's constructed. We try to make it as easy as possible for people to do that. I do take your point that we should that your point is beyond that, it goes beyond that, is that because of the circumstances and because of the rules, we should adjust the burden of proof further and basically accept that where someone says they were in that position, that is an understandable position to be in because of the circumstances at the time. And I do understand and kind of hear that, but that's not where we are at the moment on the scheme. At the moment, as I say, we do still require, and we want to try and ensure that we're making fair payments and at the same time reducing the burden of evidence as much as we can, but we do still require people to show specific loss of employment and loss of a job. And I will continue to think about the points that are being made, but that's where we are. That's where we are at the moment. I think I've covered most of the stuff that was raised, Bishop Desmond. But again, I'm really happy to deal with it in writing in due course and pick it up from others if they don't feel that I did. It was quite a lot of questions and quite a lot going on.
Thank you very much, everyone. The chat is quite full, and tomorrow morning I've got my work cut out. And I'd just like to thank you all this evening. It's 20:36. We do like to try and keep these meetings to time as much as we possibly can, but give everyone the opportunity. And that's why we thank you very much for placing the questions in the chat, because by you doing that, what happens is we're able to ask the questions. I'm going to break away from summing up. Tony, I can give you 2 minutes.
2 minutes is good.
Great. Go ahead now, because you've got your sound.
Yeah, man, it's been a great opportunity to hear what he's speaking and stuff, and on such an emotive subject, and I'm looking for some closure like everybody else. So I'm going to be quite quick. Due to the delay in the scheme being as efficient as it should have been, is there going to be an extension on the time? Is it going to, are we going to look at extending the time from instead of closing the scheme in April, because it's taken 18 months for it to start to roll out or to attempt to roll out? Shouldn't that delay be addressed? Question number one, yeah? And I would personally, because there's so much evidence that is required from people that have been affected, that, how can I put this? I think fast tracking some of the way it's been treated, we need to kind of apply some sensitivity to what's been happening to people. There's so much pressure. Now, I've been waiting for 20 years, and my status was removed in 2001. And so I've been waiting for 20 years, and I received my citizenship in 2019, and I got my passport in August. So I'm going to be traveling part because it's COVID. But what I'm looking for now is how can I realistically have an assessment made on 20 years? I used to work for local authority. I actually worked for the Home Office in my position. I've actually worked in the detention centres, Hasler, for instance. So I'm kind of au fait with the situation on the side. So what I want to know is, will there be an extension? That the scheme won't close down in April, because it's like everybody's going to be rushing to put applications in now in the next few months. And I think it's
okay. Tony, I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you. Tony, I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you. But Tony, do feel free to email us any information.
I will do, yeah.
Interestingly enough, Tom will tell you, I asked him that question earlier today about the time length of the scheme. So Tom, over to you briefly.
Yeah, so the scheme is already committed to now closing in 2023. So be open for claims until at least April 2023. We'll make a further decision closer to the date, but I think we would have to be extremely convinced that there was no one outstanding who was still entitled to compensation before we close the scheme. We've demonstrated a little bit in the conversation we had with Jackie earlier about.
I don't understand how you demonstrated.
Sorry, can I just finish so what I was going to say is that, as we discussed in the conversation I was having with Jackie earlier, we're not yet clear that everyone who is eligible has applied at all, and we need to do more work to do that. So I think I wouldn't be comfortable closing the scheme in 2023 until we were clear that we had really good evidence that every single person who was potentially entitled to compensation had been able to apply for it.
Okay.
And one more small point, just quickly, but have you got anybody working directly with your team, like Glenda, that's been affected directly by this? I mean, somebody that can represent, because I think it's a bit unfair and a bit of a conflict of interest that the Home Office is actually overseeing situation where the Home Office has been complicit in causing a lot of hardships. Now, I met David as one of the roadsters, and they happened to be excellent. They just helped me to kind of realise that there was a point of applying. Now, I've only put my application in this month, or I'm going to put it in, because I didn't trust the process, because what I've been seeing happen in the paper and stuff. So what I want to know is, to make it fairer, because I don't think that the perpetrator of the situation should then be the executor of the compensation. I think there should be an intermediate to make sure that things are fair and balanced. That's my opinion, because that's how everything else happens, legally and fairly, because then government have a lot to answer for. We haven't got time for that right now. But I think in order to show that they're listening to the people that have been damaged by, we lost your boarding passes, but now you have to prove. We've been proving so much. It's time for the government to prove that actually knew what they're saying, and to become proactive and more direct and definite with their answers. So I've been so emotional tonight, I'm having trouble speaking, but I think we need to have somebody that can speak and also represent the Windrush people in a way that is as proactive as we were attacked and dealt with. So we need a spokesman that can stand up and be that the government needs to be accountable to. So I gather how difficult it is on this, but I think you need some people in your team, Desmond, a few more proactive people that are politically more aware, so we can challenge these on a level where we know, for instance, that this is going straight to Priti Patel. No angst, no argument. We just want some direct and definite dealings, so that because I work with the local government, so I know the language, I know the political language. I want to get beyond that now, because the people that are dying, we can't speak to them anymore.
Okay.
People that are dead rather dying. So what I would like to see is that people like Glenda, people that are really proactive, and people that are involved in the Windrush scheme can be involved in the outgoing compensation and reparation. Thanks for the time. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tony, for that.
Mr. Tom, is he actually a solicitor for him to actually speak in the way that?
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for that, Tony.
Thanks.
Yeah, Mohammed, we've known each other a long time, and I just did not expect you to do what you just did. Now, can you please, you've asked your questions, and please, I'm going to mute you back because I'm going to close the meeting. If not, I'll remove you, and then we will speak about your behavior. Right. Now, thank you very much, everyone. Tony, I think what we need to do in your case, we'll take it together off this. And if we've got your contact details, we'll give them to Tom or vice versa. Tom's got his, and we'll let you two have a conversation about that. Is that okay? Because you've got a lot to say there. And one of the things we don't want to be doing is cutting anyone off whatsoever in terms of the issues that you've faced. So I want to thank everyone for being with us this evening. I want to thank our team as well for the Windrush National Organisation. Affiliated to us, Glenda, thank you this evening. With Glenda Caesar, rather, we've got Nigel Guy, who's there in Bradford, Reverend Clive, who's from Nottingham. We've got Prescott from Coventry on with us this evening, and we've also got Lorna Markland on with us from Luton this evening as well. So thank you all for joining in this evening. Thank you all for joining in. And just to let you know where we're going with this, there's been a lot of personal stories coming out here. And what we'll be doing is, we'll let you know when we're going to be facilitating one-to-one surgeries. The lady who had the issue with status will be able to facilitate those one-to-one conversations with the Home Office. On compensation, we're talking to the Home Office at the moment, because we do appreciate sometimes people want to see the face of the caseworker or see someone's face. So clearly, we're working on that as well. All your comments tonight will be taken. They will be submitted to the Home Office. I'll leave a 24-hour window open for you to email on our website any additional questions you've got. We'll collate them over the weekend and we'll submit them to the Home Office on Monday morning. So please, any additional questions, please send them through to us. So I want to thank you very much for joining us this evening. God bless you all. And I'll leave the final words with Reverend Clive Foster.
Well, again, thanks everyone for joining us for this session. And we do apologize for any kind of gremlins that would have interrupted this evening. But we all know that this is an incredible, important situation. The contribution of the Windrush generation and their descendants is immense, and we are seeking for justice. We want you to be assured that we are using these opportunities to get your voices heard, to get the justice and the change that is deserved to the Windrush generation and their descendants. So thank you all once again for coming, and please be aware of our website for future meetings that will be happening on a monthly basis. We're going to end how we started. We're just going to have a word of prayer. So those of you who would like to join me, let's just pray at this time. Father, we just thank you for your goodness and your mercies towards us. We just ask that you'll continue to strengthen us and keep us. Lord, we know that this is a really trying time in so many ways. We ask for your mercy and kindness to be upon us, and continue to strengthen us as we look to you and as we walk and seek that justice will prevail. Thank you for all that you are to us, and continue to watch over us and our families, and we pray that you'll continue to be our guiding light as we give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much for your time, and please stay safe. And thank you once again for joining us this evening. God bless.